Welcome to the edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is the week of March 22nd through the 26th. Got a lot of things to go over because the schedule is starting to actually thicken, as I would like to call it. A lot of good stuff to touch on and verify and everything. Let me go back and go over a couple things that happened recently, because this is the first show since the Pacquiao Clottey fight, and the only two fights of real note that I'm going to go over. I saw Salvador Sanchez's nephew fight and score a 6-round stoppage. Looks almost just like him. A little bit, I don't know, more stout than Sanchez, who's Salvador Sanchez the first, who was more lanky. He was like 5'7", more slender, but the kid looks okay. I don't think he's going to amount to anything remotely close to his uncle. And he scored a 6-round stoppage. Also, Humberto Soto kind of disappointed me, because I thought for sure he'd stop David Diaz, and had a much harder time with him than I thought he would. And David Diaz has seen better days, and Soto, I think, and this is just my opinion, has been gradually losing his punching power as he's been moving up in weight, and it was evident in this fight, even though he scored 2 knockdowns against Diaz, and for the most part, dominated long stretches of the fight. I just don't think Diaz should have been able to last the distance with him. And that brought us to the main event, Manny Pacquiao versus Joshua Clotty, and the fight pretty much went the way I thought it was going to go. I did think that Clotty was going to throw more punches and actually take more chances, but again, that opens yourself up. And somebody on my channel comments, or one of the video comments, made a good point about Pacquiao, and they said that this is reminding them about the younger days of Mike Tyson. Not that they're even remotely similar in style or size or anything like that. It's just that if a guy wants to try to take on the challenge head on, they're probably going to get knocked out. If they're going to, be defensive and, concentrate on being defensive and limit their punch output, they're going to end up like Bone Crusher Smith or Tony Tucker or any number, or James Quick Tillis, or any number of guys that Tyson took on earlier in his career. But, Pacquiao was dominant again, tried to make the most of the fight that he could. I was watching over the internet. You gotta feel that if HBO had time to have Max Kellerman go to Clotty's corner in the 8th or 9th round, that they were even running out of ideas on how call a fight to make it more exciting, because Pacquiao did his job of throwing close to 100 punches around, and Clotty was throwing like 30 punches around and basically hiding behind his guard most of the time. I didn't never think Clotty really could win the fight. The only chance I really gave him was if he caught Pacquiao with a sharp counter, which he did a few times later on in the fight, like with some uppercuts, that maybe he'd cut him, maybe the cut would get worse, and then maybe he could score a stop. It's the only way I saw it going down. More recently, this past week, Randall Bailey was in action over in Belgium against Jackson Bonsu in a he's fighting at welterweight, and it's in a welterweight eliminator, one of the sanctioning organizations. I believe it was the IBF. And what ended up happening here is Randall Bailey blew this guy out in 1 round. I was reading about it, and I went and tried to find the video footage for it, and man, that guy, I don't know what it was about him, whether it was bad management or bad promotion earlier in his career when he was younger, but I mean, that guy is like one of the best one-punch knockout artists in all of boxing right now. And he's linked in a series of fights. If you trace back and you ever go on YouTube and you try to find footage of fights, Randall Bailey broke onto the scene by knocking out this guy named Carlos Bolio Gonzalez, I think was his name. Scored an upset first-round knockout over him to win the WBO welterweight title back in the 90s. That guy, Bolio, scored a wicked first-round knockout over Tony the Tiger Baltazar, who you may have remembered, some of you may remember from the 80s, of mixing with the likes of Roger Mayweather and Camacho and those guys. ferocious left hook knockout over that guy. So he was in a string of one punch, one round knockouts over each other in succession for that WBO junior welterweight title. He scored a first round knockout in his welterweight ascension, I should say, against Jackson Bonsu, who was the favorite, the local favorite. 2 knockdowns, and the last one was wicked. That's my new buzzword this week, wicked. Seshu Powell scored a 12-round majority decision that should have been a unanimous decision in my estimation, over DeAndre Lattimore. And these two have history because Lattimore stopped Powell, and Powell was tested positive for marijuana, and then Lattimore got a shot at Corey Spinks and lost a somewhat disputed decision to him. So now Seshu Powell's going to get a chance to fight Corey Spinks eventually, and wish him the best of luck. And that brings us to the schedule for this week. And a lot of this, again, is just what was on my schedule, so hopefully it's as accurate as it can be. Thursday, March 25th, which is the day after tomorrow, in Los Angeles on Fox Sports Net, Abner Mares is fighting against, in the 122-pound division, a tune-up fight against Felipe Almanza. This is his tune-up fight for his shot at the Bantamweight Championship, I believe the IBF version, against Yanni Perez, who just upended Joseph King Kong Agbeko. And a lot of us have been commenting about that I personally think that this may be that Perez guy. If he performs like he did against Agbeko, it may be too much too soon for Mares, but we'll see. I mean, they can't keep him fighting tomato cans forever, can they? March 27th in Las Vegas, HBO, doubleheader. Ali Funica, rematch against Joan Guzman, 12 rounds for the IBF lightweight title. I did not cover the first fight. It was one of the most despicable decisions in many years last year, when Funica dominated Guzman in Montreal on the Butte, Butte Andrade rematch undercard, and absolutely dominated him and was ripped off with a draw. I mean, I don't know where in the world these, I don't know what kind of an excuse these judges can have for themselves, but here's the deal. Usually when something like this happens, the fighter who's on the I guess the gift end, sees their mistake and actually seizes the opportunity to make things right in the rematch. I wouldn't be surprised if Joan Guzman does this. I personally think that Ali Funica has the better, I wouldn't say skill set, but has the better equipment to get the job done. And when the fight was first made, I thought Funica was going to do what he did to Guzman. To do it twice, I don't know. I would say I'm going to go with Funica in this fight. Kind of like I'm going to go with Abner Mares in his fight, of course. I mean, he's just got to worry about not getting cut. Main event, Marcos Maidana versus Victor Cayo. 12 rounds for the interim WBA 140-pound belt. This is one of those cases where, I'm going to get to this later with this interim regular nonsense, where, he's been the mandatory challenger. Amir Khan has not fought him. He's fought Dimitri Salita, is going to line up to fight Malignaggi. At what point do you say Khan fights this guy or he's stripped? I mean, I know there's all kinds of nonsense going on, but I guess I would keep an eye on Maidana, because if they say that Khan's not going to fight him and they elevate him to the real champion, this is one of the cases where they should. I mean, in my opinion, because this is going on long enough. Not just the fight being made, but just even the negotiations they're not even negotiating it. It's more of like if this happens, then we'll do this. If this doesn't happen, then Maidana will get a shot at Amir Khan, and I'm not going for it. I'm going with Maidana in this fight. Don't know much about Cayo, but he has some interesting credentials, to say the least. That same night in Detroit on Showtime, Arthur Abraham is round 2 of the 168-pound World Classic, as they're calling it, against Andre Durrell. Alright, the first round of action, Durrell was on the very short end of a decision against Carl Frosch. Abraham scored a spectacular 12th round, last second knockout over, that brings me back, I gotta back up a second, over Jermaine Taylor. In Germany last week, again, those of us in America didn't get to see this on TV, and we had to watch it on the internet. Vladimir Klitschko boxed 11 7/8 rounds of boring boxing against Fast Eddie Chambers, who basically gave up after about the 4th or 5th round, and finally winged the left hand off the side of his head and knocked him down like a rag doll, and had him flop face forward over the bottom rope in the last 5 seconds of the fight, in which he retained the WBO and the IBF heavyweight title. I'm not so sure if it's that. I guess it is. Klitschko, Emanuel Stewart's done this to Vladimir Klitschko. He's made him into this robot with just a jab, and then if he catches you with a punch, he catches you, kind of thing. Because against, even the likes of Hasim Rahman, who tried to engage him, he wouldn't engage. It's only against the likes of Ray Austin and those kind of guys that he just moves into to kill. And I thought he should have done this a lot sooner, with Chambers, just like because I don't think Chambers could hurt him. And like with Ray Austin, he just basically walked right through him when he wanted to, and he did it in 2 rounds, a lot less than he did here, where it took all 12. All right, back to the schedule. Sorry about that digression there. Arthur Abraham against Andre Durrell. A lot of people feel Durrell deserved the decision against Frosch. I think the guy coming forward making the fight deserves the decision, generally speaking. And both of them were fighting kind of dirty, Durrell and Frosch. But Abraham, to me, has got the proven track record. I don't know how this is going to play. I would think that Abraham has enough, and if he catches Durrell, it's going to be lights out. But Durrell was able to stay away from Frosch good enough for 12 rounds. But again, Frosch I don't think is the offensive fighter that Abraham is, with as many weapons as Abraham has. And I'm going to go with Abraham here, either by a decision or a late round stoppage. It could be even a middle round stoppage for all I know. Monterrey, Mexico, no TV. Eric Morales making his return at welterweight against Jose Alfaro. I don't know who's promoting this, but I know Top Rank isn't, or at least I heard Top Rank isn't, and I'm not even sure. Hamburg, Germany, Yuriorkis Gamboa putting his WBA regular featherweight title on the line against Jonathan Victor Barrios? Hold on a second. Can't read my own writing. Barros. This is another one of those instances why are they sanctioning this? Why is this a WBA title fight? The WBA champion's Chris John. He has been for a double-digit number of defenses. There's no reason to have a regular champion and a super champion or any other nonsense in this division, because John is not a unified champion either. So they're basically going against their own rules. It's ridiculous. Gamboa big in this fight. Big. In Venezuela, WBA bantamweight champion Anselmo Moreno is going to be taking on Neomar Cermeno. This is going to be an interesting fight. I didn't do my homework on Cermeno, but I've read and seen him before, and I think it's a very dangerous fight for Moreno for 2 reasons. One, as being a Panamanian, he's on the road in Cermeno's home country, and 2, I don't think the Cermeno people would be taking this fight if they thought he would lose it or he had no chance of winning it. And I'm inclined to think that maybe an upset here. Maybe Cermeno's going to come out on top in a decision, whether it's disputed or not. I'm gonna stick my neck out and go with Cermeno in this fight. Watch he gets knocked out. Also on the card, Jorge Linares making his comeback at 130 pounds against Francisco Lorenzo in the comfy confines of Venezuela. It's got to be a nightmare for that guy, because not only does he get knocked out in the first round, but the guy he loses to goes and loses the title in the first defense in Japan following it. Rama Andresino Steve Molitor, who's a staple there, taking on a rematch with Takalani Nedlovo, who he stopped in 9 rounds in defense of the IBF junior featherweight title, which they're fighting for the vacant title that Celestino Caballero is giving up. I think Caballero is giving this up rather than fight Nedlovo, and I don't blame him particularly, and I expect Molitor to win this fight by decision. Nedlovo may give him a little bit tougher time, but I expect Molitor to win this by decision. If he doesn't, I won't be shocked. And then I believe Avellino79 asked me to do a preview of the WBC flyweight title that is being contested in Tokyo on that same day. A lot of boxing on March 27th, in which newly crowned champion Koki Kameda, fresh off his title-winning effort against Daisuke Naito, is taking on former titleist Pankaklek Wongjangkam. I've always called him Panglasek, but it's Pankaklek, at least Pangaklek, according to ESPN. Wongjangkam, who had 18, I believe 17 or 18 successful title defenses before Naito had pulled off a massive upset over him in Japan a few years back. Here's the way I see this going. Koki Kameda is obviously the superstar, the up-and-comer, this and that. Think back, those of you who have been watching boxing long enough, to when Gabe Ruelas had failed in an attempt at Azuma Nelson's super featherweight title, and Azuma Nelson, the longtime champion, had then went and lost his title to Jesse James Leija, and Jesse James Leija immediately has to give a title shot to the number 1 contender, who's Gabe Ruelas, and Gabe Ruelas runs right through him and wins the title. Ruelas has a couple of fights, and he fights the former champion. In this case, it was a rematch. And, everybody had written off Azuma Nelson, and Azuma Nelson plows right through him. With all things being equal, remember what I'm saying, all things being equal, everybody's at their tip-top condition, Wongjangkam should win this fight and win it going away. But he has a lot of miles on his odometer, especially for a really small fighter. Azuma Nelson and those guys are small fighters at lightweight, junior lightweight and featherweight. This is flyweight, where his advanced age is like ancient in this sport. And I think that if his skills have eroded like I think they have begun, Kameda's probably going to win this fight, probably by, maybe a stoppage, maybe by decision, but all things being equal, I'd go with Wongjangkam. My heart and gut are telling me to go with Wongjangkam because I have not been that impressed with Kameda. He's not as, I don't think he's as good as he's hyped to be. And I think that this is the real test for him. And I personally think that if Wongjangkam has anything left, he's going to school Kameda. He's a lefty. He was very quick. He was very slick, and he had power. And I wouldn't be surprised, come next week, if I'm telling you that Wongjangkam scored a stoppage to regain the title, I wouldn't at all be shocked. But then again, he may be a shot fighter too. There's a lot of questions to be answered here. There's a lot of intrigue. I know most of you are real high on Kameda, but I really think that, when a guy's had 18 or 19 title fights at one weight division, and I had read a year and a half ago that Wongjangkam was having trouble making the flyweight limit, and that's why he lost to Naito, although I thought that he deserved to win the decision against Naito in the rematch in which they fought to a draw. Styles make fights, and I think that Naito ways was good enough to basically upend Wongjangkam. At the same time, Koki Kameda, more of a stand-up type of boxer, puncher, is going to be what is made to order for Wongjangkam. If this is the Wongjangkam of old, if it's not, it could be a really long night for him. Could be very interesting. I mean, this could be either, like I told you, Azuma Nelson, Gabe Ruelas 2, or it could be Terry Norris against Donald Curry, which was a disaster. It was good while it lasted, but the younger fighter pulled away and knocked out the older fighter, and it's going to be one of those two scenarios, I think. I personally think. Although I expect the fight to go the distance, and I think there's probably going to be some controversy. And I think that's going to about do it for this show. If there's anything else you want me to talk about, I hope you like the Gabby Canizales Miguel Laura fight, because I really tried hard to get that up on the last channel, and that the night I was trying to upload that was when I found out the channel was canceled or suspended. And I don't give a damn what anybody thinks, because that kind of stuff just needs to be shared. A lot of people didn't even see that fight, and it was spectacular. That's going to do it for this episode of Boxing Info. Take care.